Mike's on.
Mike's on.
On.
Check, check.
Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for June 1st, 2016. We'll begin with a special order calendar. Decision items. Item number 1, A5353BZ 24002 Knapp Street, Brooklyn. Hey.
So the applicant supplied us with revised plans dimensioning the pumps located at 15 feet 4 inches from the street building line, as we requested, and we conditioned on the 1954 grant as well. So do we have any additional comments, or we're good to go for this?
Yep.
Great.
Item number 2, 22984BZ 7528 Queens Boulevard, Queens.
The applicant, oops, my thing just moved. The applicant provided the CV approval, and he also showed us pictures of the repaired fence and clearing the overgrown brush. Provided a letter from the architect representing that DOB approved the fire safety measures. I'd just be interested in knowing if the fire department had also seen this, so we will ask that question, but otherwise I had no other issues. Great.
Item number 3, 31806BZ 4905 Astoria Boulevard, Queens.
Okay, the applicant provided the board with revised plans showing location of the 8-inch high curb, condition 10 years, dating back from the expiration, as well as new striping.
Do you have the mic on?
I think so.
Yes, she does.
My mic is on. Am I not registering?
Just lower it a
Wait,
little closer to your mouth.
it's wobbly. How's that? Yeah? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, it's worked.
Okay. So we'll condition the approval on the installation of the completed curb along the rear, containing the planting area and striping of the parking spaces. Did I cover all the points?
Yep.
Item number 4, 47-10BZ 895 Zarega Avenue, the Bronx.
May 3rd, FDNY requested that we defer this decision until they had a chance to review the interior containment areas. They did, and the fire department has come back the okay. So I had no further issues on this other than the fire department's approval. You're okay? Got better?
Okay, keep going.
I just had some comments, which could be conditions, that the landscaping that they install must be planted in the ground, not in a planter. And the galvanized sheet fencing they installed, but it hasn't been painted. It will be painted and coated with a graffiti-resistant coating. And the removable bollards will be filled with concrete,
Got it.
which it didn't appear they were from the photos.
Yeah, they did not look like they were substantial. Okay,
All
great.
right, so we'll just condition that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, continued hearing items. Item number 5, 1255-80BZ 3533 31st Street, Queens. We have a request for adjournment.
We can do that. Yeah, they didn't submit anything, did they?
No, they submitted a request for adjournment
Yeah.
for, I think, the July hearing.
All right, we'll work it out tomorrow.
New cases, item number 6, 17304BZ 5 West 37th Street, Manhattan.
The applicant is requesting an extension of 10 years of a special permit for a PCE in approximately 4,147 square feet of the cellar of 5 West 37th Street. The building has 12 stories with use group 6 stores and a restaurant on the ground floor. I asked that the applicant clarify the property lines in the building. I think the previously approved plans show the building as 104.79 feet, and the proposed conditions show 98 feet 9 inches. So I think he needs to take a look at that. Also, the applicant states that the elevator violations are not associated with the PCE. Please demonstrate that, because the PCE is serviced by an elevator. And provide us maybe with some updated photographs. Since this is an extension, the fire safety notes should indicate that the interior fire alarm is installed with pull stations and smoke detectors, et cetera, and show proof of that installation. Also, there were complaints concerning unlicensed massage, and violations were issued in January. The applicant will need to explain the content of the violation served and provide us with massage licenses, as well as show the violations are on their way to being cleared. Anything else?
I think they submitted 12 licenses.
Did they?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see that.
And they're missing a signage analysis form, I believe, and they do have a plaque on the front wall.
And then if they could clarify the services they do offer. I think the last time they were here, they offered manicures, pedicures, and skincare, but they didn't really mention that this time.
Just one operational page.
Yeah, so just tell us what the services that they provide, and maybe show where those services are being given. Mr. Sean?
Just following up on that, I was looking at the website, and the website indicated that there were steam rooms that were provided, but the plan doesn't indicate that, so would like some clarity on that. Then also, it seems the operator's name that was listed in the prior BSA approval was New York Midtown Corporation, and this one is New York Health Spa. So we just want to make sure if it's the same entity. If not, do we need a DOI review? Also, there were some open violations, and I don't know if those open violations, these are active violations, and I don't know if they are related to the site in question. But as I was going through the biz, there were a couple of issues related to sprinkler pipes. FDNY had reported multiple rotten stairs and other things, so we just want to make sure those have been addressed, even though they may not be related to the facility, but they do affect the access and the safety.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
we need to
Great.
Item number 7, 80-5 BC, 49 West 33rd Street, Manhattan.
This is another extension of term for a PCE expiring November 15th, 2015. The applicant should correct the board resolution history on the site to read that the board originally granted the special permit in 2005, not 2015. That's when the grant expired. The PCE is located approximately in the first and second floors of 49 West 33rd Street. The previous grant lists the total square footage as 8496 square feet, but their papers, I think, only talk about 4,400 square feet, or it was just unclear.
Part of it is located in the cellar.
I know, but
So-
they don't.
I
yeah,
have a feeling that they're not
They're not
talking about
counting the cellar
because it's
space.
not counted as floor area, but when
but-
added together, it's probably the 8,400.
And they need to clarify that because the cellar
Yeah.
counts towards the total space of the PCE. Applicant did not provide us, I guess, with the proposed conditions, which would have been nice. And are there any changes to the hours of operations? Is it still 10 to 10? And I guess the community board has recommended approval. So any other outstanding issues that we want to
They
discuss?
need a signage analysis sheet here.
Signage analysis.
They have signage.
The zoning sheet is also incomplete, and the hours of operation as listed on the website is different from what the community board had
Right.
indicated, and I don't think the statement mentions anything about the hours of operation. We definitely need a clarification. Again, going to the website, I noticed that the entity name is Aura Spa, which is different from what was the previous entity name that we had granted the approval on. So we need a DOI review, and the question becomes, do we need does the applicant need to amend the application that is presented before us? Also, the statement of findings need to indicate that it meets all the prior BSA requirements. And again, on the website, what I saw, at least based on photographs. I was trying to match that with what was on the plan as approved, and I could not place the, so I think it would be very helpful to have the existing condition plan, and assuming that's the proposed condition plan, to understand
Agreed.
that. And also we want to make sure that the fire safety measures, all of those have been addressed. I had a question, and that because there are some, there's hot and cold tubs, and I don't know if a DOH needs to approve the, needs to give a permit for that. I'm just basing it on a prior application where DOH needed to,
For pools and spas.
for schools and spas, so that's a question. I don't know if that is needed.
You can ask.
Again, a concern that I had when, based on my site visit, was when I took the elevator to the second floor and I entered the vestibule, it was completely pitch dark. And there were objects that were kind of placed there, which were kind of leftover objects, and definitely not something that you would want, and not something that was approved. Like, these were old chairs, baskets, that were just, they were kind of like holdover area, and that's in the way of the clear pathway requirement, so that needs to be addressed. And this was another question. If this is a gender-neutral facility, is that...
Yeah, at least I think we talked about this a little bit, that there wasn't sort of a men's area and a women's area in dressing, et cetera, that it was...
Dressing and shower and other things.
Right, so maybe they need to show us sort of an operational plan of how
yeah.
things actually work. Okay. Anything else? Next.
Item number 8, 23807BC, 5-17, 47th Avenue, Queens.
Okay.
It's a CUNY graduate school.
Right, they're asking for a 4-year extension of time to complete construction of the 12-story mixed-use building, including a 6-story CUNY Graduate Center in an M1-4 and M1-4 R6A district in Long Island City. The original grant was in September of 2008, and the applicant has performed the required remediation on the site, as well as completed the mixed-use building, which has received several TCOs. The applicant has not constructed the CUNY Graduate Center as yet, and the applicant has received a series of letters of substantial compliance, as well as amendments to the original plans, which included modifications to the approved plans and permitted the applicant to file 2 separate building applications at DOB, which they have done. The board approved a 4-year extension of time to complete in September, to expire in September, sorry. And so the applicant is in the process of securing the financing for the remainder of the project, and once that financing is secured, we could start construction. Comments?
Well, I think this site is a bit of an eyesore in this area where everything is new, very new. And I just would like to know how long they think the site is going to be in the current condition. I mean, the fencing has a bit of graffiti. It is a vacant, idle site, and I wouldn't like it to remain that way for the entire 4 years.
So perhaps we need to ask them to come up with a plan for either
Schedule.
replacing or maintaining at least the exterior of the fencing, and then give us a schedule of construction, but that we want them to make sure that the site is clean and free of debris and not an eyesore. Right? Anything else?
No, those were my concerns.
We're good.
Appeals calendar, item number 9, 30008A, 3935 27th Street, Queens.
Are we still waiting for best sign off? Okay.
Oh, no.
So I'm thinking we give them at least a month probably to fix this, and maybe we can reach out
Yeah.
and get this done. It's been quite some time, 3 months, 3.5 months. So let's make that happen.
Continued hearing items, item number 10, 6515BZ, 6615A, 361 Central Park, West Manhattan.
As I scroll through to get down to my notes. Long hearing. There we go. Okay, so there are two applications before the board. The first, an application to waive a number of bulk regulations applicable to the subject property. And second, an application to waive certain provisions of the multiple dwelling law. Both applications were made in furtherance of the conversion of an existing vacant church building, which is an individual New York City landmark, into a building which combines residential and community facility uses. A few things to note before I think we get started. The board is primarily concerned with the variance application. The MDL waiver sought concern regulations that protect the light and air of residents in multiple dwellings. These waivers are directly associated with the applicant's plan, and although may be granted separately from the variance case, the MDL waiver sought here would effectively be rendered moot if the current variance waivers are not granted. Understanding that, the opposition has called the use of the building into question, namely the conversion of this site from a house of worship to residential use. This issue has not been, nor is it before the board currently. The proposed use, which the opposition has focused on both here and at LPC, is entirely as of right and is a matter of zoning appropriate for this neighborhood. Also of note, the Landmarks Preservation Commission has approved by certificate of appropriateness dated March 10, 2015, those proposed modifications to the historic building. While this is not necessarily dispositive with respect to the board's evaluation of the proposal on the surrounding neighborhood, the C of A and the fact that the proposed use is as of right and within the existing residential context of the neighborhood speaks directly to the C finding under 7221. Although the board has heard testimony related to the impact of the proposed use on the building's neighbors, and the board has pushed to ensure that the proposed use is as little impact as possible to its neighbors. But I may reiterate that the issues before the board are solely limited to the zoning waivers being sought in the variance that relate to the building's rear yard, the dimensions of its inner court, and the distances between legal windows and the lot lines of the property, as well as the distance between legal windows and the structure's inner court. The board's only responsibility is to consider those waivers in the context of the applicant's plans and to determine if the requested waivers were consistent with the minimal variance. In my opinion, although the latest submission is a more comprehensive submission in some respects than the prior submissions, I found this submission raised more questions than it answered. It is my belief that the obsolescence of the existing building satisfies the board's findings under 7221A, and that the applicant is unable to earn a reasonable return because the building's obsolescence, absent relief from the board. Therefore, in my opinion, 7221B is also satisfied. I also believe that under the board's precedent, such a hardship was not created by the owner, and therefore the application, I think, stands under 7221D. The only issue, and significantly so for me, remains whether the waivers sought are the minimum necessary to afford the owner a reasonable return. In my opinion, the applicant has not convinced me the minimal variance has been reached. The board is not empowered to create windfalls and is required to grant only that which is necessary to avoid a hardship that precludes a reasonable return. Therefore, in my opinion, this application turns on the board's finding under 7221E, its minimum variance standard. The board, through a lengthy, lost my place. The board, through a lengthy process, hold on, as I scroll back. The board, through a lengthy hearing process, repeatedly asked the applicant to provide a more credible argument, primarily financial, for the waiver sought. I found the applicant did a convincing job in responding to the board's criticisms concerning sales prices. However, by the same token, the applicant, without justification, increased its stated development cost and extended the build-out time for essentially the same scope of work. At this time, I think I'd like to invite my fellow commissioners to state their responses to the last submission and pose questions that we would like to have answered at tomorrow's hearing. I start with perhaps Commissioner Otley Brown. Can you give us your insights into the recent financials that they've
Well, my
submitted?
issue is still the E-finding. The sales prices have been satisfactorily addressed through documentation and explanation. Unfortunately, the development costs have been drastically increased and are now even higher than they were in the very first report that included the development rights. A major change in assumptions that ripples through the entire set of development costs is the change in construction period to 5 years. Another major change in assumptions that ripples through the entire set of development costs is the interest rate on the construction loan. There's hardly any justification for these changes other than 2 loan commitment letters that are personalized to this particular project in terms of the interest rate used and not industry standard, and yet it affects many of the soft costs, raising the development cost by $14 million. However, the prime rate is only 3.5%, up from 3.25% a year ago. And because of that low rate, which is subject to change, we actually allowed financial experts to use a conservative 5%, but there's no justification for using 7%. The fact that the subject developer only can get a 7% loan is not something that the board considers. We use appraisals and feasibility studies to determine the norm, and that is done using comparables, not actual information. If we were to use actual subject information, we would have used the sales price, which is much less than the acquisition costs. The applicant has also increased several hard and soft cost items with little backup to support, except for statements like, quote, consulting experts have said. If they wanted the board to accept these increased costs, they would have needed to justify them through detailed documentation using well-known real estate sources that set the parameters, as well as a finely tuned analysis justifying their assumptions for each of the line items that they have changed. Beginning with the construction period and interest rate, these are the following issues that were not satisfactorily addressed. Construction contingency at 5% or $1.9 million added for the first time. Purchase allowance for appliances of $1 million when that was previously accounted for in the previous set of costs. Developers' overhead fee going up from 1.5 to 2% because the subject developer thought it was too low. They stated that consultants say this complicated project should have a 3.5% fee with no backup or documentation. Construction management fee increased from 2% to 8% or from $760,000 to $3 million. The subject expert said it could be as much as 10%, but there's no backup or documentation. Project legal fees increased from $216,000 to $415,000 to reflect actual costs on this project. Once again, we do not use actual project information. As I said before, if we did that, we could use the actual sales price for the property. Construction period interest increased from $4.1 million to $8 million, and this was backed up by the 2 preliminary financing commitments for the 7% interest loan. This is not a justification for a rate change in an appraisal. This is personal information to the subject property. Lender and mortgage broker fees increased for no other reason than market pricing. They increased to $1.4 and $729,000 respectively. Not quite sure where these line items originally were, and the applicant failed to provide backup for the calculation. Construction insurance increased from $756,000 to $1.4 million to reflect the market. No backup or documentation. Real property tax increased from $260,000 to $935,000 to reflect actual tax liability over the 4-year development, construction, and marketing period. Even though they say 5 years in the narrative, I believe they increased it to cover 4 years. And once again, there really isn't a reason for the increase in the construction period. Finally, instead of trying to meet the findings, the applicant appears to be backing into the numbers to support the project in its current form. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Montanez?
Okay, well, I did like the change in the design with the entrance on, the residential entrance on 96th Street, which was a big improvement, and reduction of 1 unit, but in looking at the new financials by a new financial analyst, similar to what Commissioner Otley Brown said, I had a lot of questions regarding these increased costs, which I didn't think they had justified. In terms of the construction period, they've already started work on the remediation and some demolitions, so I didn't really see how that was justified. And similarly, the different items in terms of contingency and insurance. Insurance was already included in McQuilkin's estimate, as well as the appliance package. And I don't really have answers to those questions. I would like to know why those additional cost items were included in this go-round.
Mr. Shaw.
First of all, I think this was a much better application than we have. It was very clear. It was.
Microphone on, sorry.
This was a very clear application, much better application than the prior ones. I thought the arguments were much more succinct, and I felt the reduction of one unit and increasing the community facility is what we had asked for previously, and they have addressed that. And I agree with Commissioner Montanez, the separate residential entrance from that retains the existing church entrance is a better solution, and I do like that solution. I overall, I think this is a better application, and I would support this application.
Good. I personally will just reiterate my feelings that there were cost increases that weren't necessarily justified, which I think reflects on a sort of a system of doing things that we had criticized before. So although I think that they have done a better job, I don't think for me that they have given me what I would consider the minimal variance without some justification. So I think the applicant has heard our concerns, and we urge the applicant to come prepared tomorrow with some credible and succinct answers. Additionally, the opposition will be given a chance to be heard tomorrow as well, and I urge both represented opposition and unrepresented members of the public to focus their comments on the issues directly before the board and not on perhaps larger issues that are not really within our purview. So, until tomorrow.
Zoning calendar, decision items, item number 11, 31814 BZ, 1672, 1680, 86th Street, Brooklyn.
The applicant requested this to be taken off calendar because we have a new owner that, or the prospect of a new owner that may not be either fulfilling the board's requests or not. So we can do that, and I guess we can discuss a time when it either comes back or not.
Continued hearing items, item number 12, 33013 BZ, 2801 Brown Street, Brooklyn.
There was no submission, correct?
Well, there was a letter.
Was there? But they want an adjournment.
Adjournment.
Right, but they didn't give us a submission. Okay. We'll take care of it.
Item number 13, 33114 BZ, 2171 Ocean Parkway, Brooklyn.
So the applicant provided revised proposed conditions, which modified the garage door. That's good. They showed a car fitting under the header. The applicant provided the rear yard dimensions of the two adjacent properties, and the applicant contends that the seller complies with the TPPN 2012-008. And I did not check, but I presume that they've actually made it, that it's less than 50% of the total square footage of the building, that the seller is at less than 50%. Plans now show more of the existing walls to be retained, and a cross-section through the existing building was provided as we requested. And the note has been added to the plot plan showing that the proposal complies with the Ocean Parkway Special District regulations for landscaping under 113-30. I just want the applicant to clarify whether under 113-571, when you're confronted with a boundary line and there's this small portion of the lot that is actually at the boundary between the sub-district and the Ocean Parkway district, that they just make that notation as per the wording of the zoning resolution. I think that the sub-district is treated as an R41 and not as an R5, but they could just clarify that and make that note. The southern side yard has been revised to provide an 8-foot distance between the buildings, and the floor area ratio had been updated. Additionally, the applicant mentions Resolution 10705BZ as showing the BSA's approval of reduced side yards under 73-622 that permitted a straight line extension that continued an existing 9-inch side yard with a reduction in the opposing side yard from 9'2" to 8 foot. Here, in the present case, the applicant requests that the BSA to approve a straight line extension of a pre-existing non-complying side yard and the reduction of the opposing side yard. It was not clear, however, from the case that they cited that that 9-inch side yard resulted in accommodating an 8-foot distance between buildings, but in any case, the applicant has only really cited one such instance, and I'm not sure that that's very dispositive of the board's inclinations. Additionally, one case without sort of a context was difficult, at least for me, to make that decision. Concerning the 3-story height of the building, the applicant maintains that 5 buildings, one with a stop work order I had, have 3 stories in their sort of catchment area, but the applicant, I think, needs to give us more documentation on those homes and not simply give us a couple of aerial photos and expect us to read into it what they would like us to read into it. The adjacent homes cited for the rear yard context also have ECB violations and perhaps were not built necessarily legally. So I think the applicant needs to address that, and it would be helpful if the applicant placed the buildings cited within a context, perhaps on a map, and then show us exactly, graphically perhaps, what it really looks like. Anything else?
Well, regarding the first, they're saying that they're keeping the first floor joists. And in the section, it shows the entire first floor being existing to remain, but they don't really show how they're going to add 2 feet to the first floor joists, or how it's going to be supported. So that wasn't clear to me. They could explain that. Regarding the 3-story homes, they provided us some examples, but they didn't give us the backup. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Yeah, I did.
Which, I had to go look them all up myself, which was annoying. Regarding the rear yards, they really should discount both adjacent properties. One has a stop work order and the other one has the ECB violations. So those extensions into the rear yard are not legal, and they should go beyond that. And I was wondering if they could provide any other special permits within this particular area. There's only one, I believe, on the block, or within, maybe 400 feet or 1,000 feet, what has been our tradition regarding these homes.
What history is reflected in terms of rear yards and height, et cetera.
Right.
Gotcha. Anyone else?
I am still a little bit concerned about the double height space on the front, and I'm wondering if that can be reduced to bring the height down, or in a way to move the activities proposed in the back to the front and reduce the height in the back and also the bulk in the back, either way. And I don't think that solution has been addressed in any form from the previous discussion.
Commissioner Otley-Brown, do you have any?
No questions here.
Okay. This concludes the public review session for June 1st, 2016. Doing myself?
That was fast.